prior to the discovery of crude oil, agriculture was the mainstay of Nigeria's economy from 1960s to 1969. The sector accounted for an average of 57% of the country's gross domestic product and generated 64.5% of export earnings. From 1970 to late 2000s, the sector's contribution to the GDP and export earnings steadily declined as the country's focus shifted to petroleum and gas exploration. Joining me to discuss this and the agricultural value chain is Mobayo Ekundayo, Deputy General Manager, Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Great. The recent fall in crude oil prices has triggered conversations around the role of agriculture in economic diversification. What's your position on this?
Yes, thank you. Crude oil volatility, yes, I consider a blessing in disguise to the country. I'll look at this in two perspectives. One, prior to discovery of oil in commercial quantity in Nigeria, we were greatly into agriculture. And in those times, we had groundnut, a lot of groundnut, which we read about, groundnut pyramid. We had oil in the east, oil palm in the east. We had cocoa in the south, which sustained Nigeria's economy majorly at that time, So when we discovered oil in the 70s, during the oil boom, we paid less attention to agriculture. And well, what we have seen in current times is that oil, the world has continued to find alternative to oil. So, which makes it necessary for us to go back to our agriculture. Nigeria is richly blessed with good soil, and we have the population to farm and get results. So, reason why at this very point diversification is very important. On a second note, if you look at the population of Nigeria, as you mentioned in the 60s, we had about population of about 50 million or thereabout. Currently, we are over 200 million, and there is need for us to feed ourselves. So food sustainability that will ensure peace. You understand? Because of that, we also have to look at agriculture. If you also look at employment, where we can turn to that can employ a lot of our teeming youth is also agriculture. So reason why diversification at this point is very important, and more attention had to be paid to agriculture. Thank you.
In Nigeria, land expansion has been a primary growth driver, accounting for 6% of the total food. How are farming inputs like pesticides, seedlings, fertilizers, supply being maintained across the value chain from your organization's perspective? What you are on the ground, what you know?
Opening up, turning attention to agriculture has and will throw up a lot of employment opportunity. You agree with me that down the value chain, we have different processes in the value chain. We have fertilizer distribution, we have seedling, we have land opening, we have cultivation, we have storage system, and across all this chain, we require service providers which will employ majorly our teeming youth. So in that line, it will help to sustain and to grow employment and the wealth of the nation as well as the farmers. Thank you.
So if we move down further the value chain, we'll talk about processing, marketing activities around the midstream section of agriculture, where critical infrastructure for Nigeria had been very poor, investments had been low, unfavorable government policies have also been identified. What role is the NAIC playing in alleviating these measures in the manner of speaking?
Okay, thank you. The most cogent area of intervention is risk management. NAIC, Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation, a fully owned organization of the federal government, was set up to mitigate risks that are particularly associated with agriculture. we're all aware, agriculture is heavily affected by natural hazards like weather, rainfall, drought, etc., etc. Then it is very important that across the value chain, you also observe that there are risks which might be related to primary production, secondary production, processing, marketing, storage, even in transporting to the market. There are associated risks. So these risks are promptly and adequately covered by NAIC insurance. For example, in primary production is basically farmers cultivating while, from planting to harvesting. So several of these risks, drought, rainfall, pests and diseases could affect that. NAIC has policy called crop insurance, subsidized crop insurance. Subsidized crop insurance, in what sense? It means that it is subsidized by federal government and state government. Government pays 50% of premium payable, per farmer on behalf of the farmer to NAIC. The farmer or the participating bank for commercial agriculture only for food crops only pay 50%. So it means that if a farmer is insuring a hectare of farm for maybe 20,000 naira, NAIC will send invoice of 10,000 naira to government and collect only 10,000 naira from the participating bank or the farmer involved or the aggregators involved in the production.
So how does according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, Nigeria is the 6th largest producer of cocoa globally, encouraged with a production volume of 248,000 metric tons of cocoa beans. However, only about 30% of the cocoa beans is processed, while the remaining are exported. How can we become resourceful economically with this commodity, looking at what our neighbors are doing in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire?
Okay, I am aware that the federal government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, I think in the last 2 years, has paid attention to cocoa production and cocoa processing. They are working with Cocoa Farmers Association of Nigeria to push in major intervention into that sector, as has been done with refund for rice production and for maize association too, for maize production. So I'm sure with that drive, we will see not only production increase in cocoa production increase, we will also see significant processing. There will be investors that are keen to processing of the pods into finished products, that could now eventually be exported. That will also add value, to our teeming youth by creating and providing employment for them in those competition. I believe in those sectors. I believe with time, if we follow this consistently, the story will also change about cocoa in Nigeria. Thank you.
Let's speak to the import processing segments of the agri-care value chain. How has this evolved over time?
Well, the segment had a good foundation. There were institutions like Nexim, NEBZA, etc. However, along the line, they have several of these institutions seem to have collision of functions. However, recently, the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment with Nigerian Export Promotion Council jointly spearhead, and they are serving as arrowhead of the export trade. This is expected to yield results in future years.
In 2022, the agricultural transformation agenda by the government then was introduced to improve farmers' income, increase food security, and generate employment. We are also seeing the ERGP and APP prioritizing food security and self-sufficiency. In spite of all of this, the sector still has its frailties. Why do you think this becomes perennial and very difficult to resolve?
Well, the ATA policy I think has opened the eyes of investors to opportunities available, in feeding, providing food, sufficient food for the Nigerian population. We have a huge population and a growing population, and there are opportunities, across the value chain in these lines. And you can see investors, even foreign investors has come and local investors has taken advantage of this. You can see Dangote Tomatoes in Kano, is employing a lot of youth in trying to process tomato, to avoid wastage. It's a huge industry that is there in that regard. So we have some other sectors like that. Some other major companies are into rice production. Some other major companies are into milling and all that. Government has encouraged that through different types of funding, through CACs and other aggregation packages available through the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Yes, I was just about to ask how your organization at the NAIC relates with the Central Bank and other agencies such as NASL.
Yes, we work together. We work together, and when they aggregate, the Central Bank has various schemes. We have what we call CACs, for example, Credit Agric Scheme, where farmers or groups of farmers can aggregate themselves, either per local government or, they come under aggregators in their thousands, you understand, and they approach the CBN. Their IDs IDs are, taken, you understand, so there are records. So through those aggregators, CBN provides input, to them through funding bank that they use. And NAIC and those funding banks and CBN will work together, So we provide the necessary insurance policies required, even from the seedling stage to the primary planting, and even if it is livestock production, from purchase of day-olds to, feeds and all that. So it's not just giving cash to the farmer directly. CBN, conjunction with banks and NAIC, collaborate and, supervise the process, of disbursement and distribution of those inputs, So, and at the end of the day, we form a monitoring team whereby monthly, representative of CBN in the state and the participating bank and NAIC official in the state will pay working visit, inspection visits to various farms to monitor progress and to promptly notify NAIC if there are issues, with disasters or diseases on the farm, so that we can promptly advise on how to ameliorate the situation or how to pay the losses and bring the farmer back to production in the next season. Thank you.
Mobayo Ekundayo of NAIC, the Deputy Managing Director. Thank you so much for your time talking to us about Nigeria's agricultural value chain. We appreciate your time.